Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at silver. It is time for another update, and on this chart it has become even more difficult since the latest drop to track an impulse to form within this area. And while it is still technically possible by following through our suspicion from the previous video where we would have formed in this area a fifth wave, it is going to be a quite unlikely interpretation in my opinion, because to have this as a 1, 2, 3 and have this as a fifth wave afterwards is just something I would consider a very unlikely structure. And while again it is still technically possible, we did hold here the 50% retracement in such an expectation, I wouldn't consider it reliable. So I believe it is best to focus on other structures, on other interpretations, and those would have to be shifted to a diagonal structure. Now, before we go into all those details, I would like to go quickly through the larger time frame for any of you who might be new. And here we have been tracking a series of 1-2 setups, we were tracking ideally an impulse. But since this is really very unlikely to be the case, I would instead start shifting the expectation to unfold within a diagonal structure. So here we would have instead an A, B, C pattern within a wave 1, we would be tracking here a wave 2, and we would be looking for an A, B, C structure within a wave 3. It is overall going to be much more difficult to track this structure reliably, and within the wave A, we can either have a 3-wave pattern in an A, B, C structure, or we can be looking at a leading diagonal in the case of this chart, in a 5-wave pattern. So we should be able to tell which type of structure is more likely to have formed, but really only once we start the 5th wave after our larger wave 4 correction. Fortunately, at this point we might not be as affected by this idea. So previously we were considering here in the white scenario potentially a series of 1-2 setups. I would still like to track this idea within a large leading diagonal, but I would not be able to track internally a series of 1-2 setups, and I would instead need to consider, if this is indeed a wave 1, to have something like an A, B, C structure unfold within this area. And this is probably going to be my preferred interpretation, and within this idea I would probably need to even add a count for it. We have here an A, B, C structure, and within this wave C we would need to be tracking an ending diagonal since we have failed to create a reliable impulse. I say reliable and not complete failure because again it is still technically possible to track this as a 1, 2, 3rd, 4th and a 5th, but again very unlikely I believe. So in my preferred structure within this wave C, I would probably consider here to have a 1, 2, 3, 4th and a 5th overall. I would still be looking for this 3rd wave to extend to higher prices though. I wouldn't consider it to have a top in place just yet, but I would be cautious at the same time. So in the previous video, also within a yellow interpretation, we were tracking a potential impulse to extend here. I consider this really impossible at the moment, and even if I wanted to allow this to work out as an impulse, we have failed to hold internal levels of support in the follow-up wave 4. This would not be a valid count anymore. So in this case, I would shift this to the idea of an ending diagonal internally within this larger wave city upside, where in this wave 3 I'm only tracking an A, B, C pattern to complete to have a more full wave 3. And within this wave C, I believe we might get another high. Now it's not necessary, we might get other extensions as well, I'm not ruling that out either. And I want you to be fully aware, we cannot make too many assumptions on the larger structure here. We need to be flexible. But fortunately, the area of support we would be tracking for continuation to higher prices would heavily overlap in both interpretations that I could consider, which is why we will focus on this idea, where a 3rd wave would form a top once we either form the next high within the wave C or we failed to hold the levels of support. Now, before we move into the actual area of support to track for continuation to higher prices, I wanted to briefly mention our channel newsletter, where you get access to our monthly top picks. You will get our specific list of stocks to focus on for the next month, the stocks that we consider likely to head into an area of support that is worth tracking, that is worth considering for a position. You can find the link for signups in the description. It is completely free, and if you enjoy the content and you want to support the channel, You can check out our channel membership, the link for that is in the description as well, or you can click the join button and you will get access to a couple of cool perks such as additional content. Just recently we have posted our gold analysis there, for members only, since it has been an underperformer on the channel, and I believe gold is an underrated asset amongst many investors and traders, but it has an even better structure than what we have on the silver chart. Now sure, less volatility, less potential for gains, but at the same time it does provide more stability and more reliability. Now, since you're interested in silver and precious metals, you might be interested in gold. It might not be the only precious metal you're interested in, but for now, let's head back to the chart. And here we can track within this wave C the idea of an extension in an ending diagonal in a 5-wave pattern to the upside, where we would have formed already the wave 4, supposedly, and we would be within the 5th wave to the upside. If we form another low within this wave 4 area, I would have to assume a more substantial top to already be in place, in fact. So, to be clear, I'm tracking this as an ending diagonal. ABC in a wave 1, ABC in the wave 3, and ABC in a wave 5 that I'm tracking. So happens that within this wave 4 retracement, this wave 4 massive drop we have just had, we have broken even below the last level of support for such an expectation, the 61.8% retracement, but fortunately it has only been brief and I am still able to look for continuation to higher prices from this area, from this interpretation's perspective, with the assumption that we do not form another low. Already a break below the beginning of the current wave 4 low would be a strong signal this structure has failed to extend to higher prices, and we would need to track a slightly different count. I would still be bullish, I would still be looking for continuation to higher prices, even if I had to consider this larger wave 3 to have a top in place. But right now I would actually focus still on continuation in a 5th wave within this area. Already within this wave 4 we can notice that we have formed a zigzag correction. We have a 5-wave move to the downside in a wave A, we have a 3-wave correction in a wave B, and another 5-wave move to the downside in a wave C. Already from the current low in the wave 4, we might even be able to identify an initial 5-wave move to the upside within this area, which seems extremely promising for a potential 1-2 setup. Now remember, this is a 5th wave of an ending diagonal, so we are only looking to build an ABC structure in the wave 5, meaning that this wave A could form an impulse, but at the same time it could be just an ABC structure itself. In the end, I would still be looking for continuation to higher prices within a 1-2 setup here. It would have the same area of support, whether it is a wave 2, whether it is a wave B. And in this expectation, I'm looking for support at the levels between the $77 all the way down to the 78.6% retracement at the $68.3 level. For me, the 78.6% retracement, especially in the current conditions where we have already broken below the area of support, but the $78.6 level is the last level I'm looking for this to be able to reliably continue to higher prices. Yeah, even if it wasn't within this context, the last level of support is the 78.6% retracement, and we have so far formed a 3-wave pattern into the 50% retracement. I would typically consider this correction to be complete. I really wouldn't need any additional extension to lower prices for this to have an even more reliable bottom. We already have the 3-wave pattern in this area. In fact, if we form a 5th wave in this structure and we form a 5th wave down, I might be looking for preferred continuation to even lower prices. Yeah, we might form an extension of the wave 2 in an ABC structure. We would be looking at that with high probability. And right now, this is not the case, but we are still within the area of resistance for a potential wave 4 correction. It extends all the way up to the 61.8% retracement, and so far we have pushed, even in this case, perfectly into the 50% retracement, the $79 level, before getting our rejection. Additionally to that, we only have a 3-wave pattern to the upside that has so far formed, so the probabilities aren't necessarily suggesting that we are looking for a direct breakout, and to be honest, I might even need to consider this to be a 1-2 instead of this being a 1-2. In that case, we should actually be looking for the break of the $80.6 level, yeah, a slight upgrade for the 61.8% retracement, and still, even in this structure, we would have touched the 50% retracement before starting this correction. Now, I'm confident that will be impacting the price, and if the inflation is low, we will probably see a reset of this wave too. If it's high, we might be looking for a more direct breakout, but for me, I would still need to see the $80.6 level broken, and even then, we might still be looking at other levels of resistance, but I believe we should be focusing primarily on this area of resistance. And once again, at the moment, the structure to the upside remains unreliable. I wouldn't trust it for continuation to higher prices, but I might be looking here for an initial 5-wave move to the upside within a leading diagonal. If we form such a structure, we might not break the last level of resistance, but we would have a confirmation that something more bullish may be going on, and in such an expectation, I would be watching the levels down to the $76.4 level. We have already pushed very close to it. If we break that last level of support, and especially if we break below this swing low down to the $76 level, we would have our confirmation that this structure is quite unreliable and that a more direct extension in the wave 2 would occur here in this wave 2 in yellow. But who knows, we might get a larger extension in an ABC pattern. Ultimately, without holding this area of support and forming a 5th wave in this area, we will not have a reliable structure to track for continuation to higher prices. But for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.